Hey everybody, welcome to Jet Live. I'm here with Rachel Dean, all the way from New
Hey.
York. Uh, this is so amazing for me. I'm so excited that Rachel took the time out to be with us tonight. Here, at least, it's still afternoon for you over there.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but this is such a pleasure, and let's get started. So usually, this is what I usually do is so how are you doing, Rachel? Like, what's been going on in New York over there for
Such a
you?
good question. Yeah. I'm in Queens, and that's where we live is about 30 minutes walk from where like the hardest hit hospital was a month ago. It's not that bad now, but it was like that was like the kind of epicenter. And so like it was kind of weird to think about that because what we were seeing was not really related to that. I mean, there were like a few less people on the streets and there are people wearing masks, but
Mhm.
we aren't seeing, it's so weird, this virus, because we're not seeing like actual visual effects beyond a couple of things unless you're like in the
Yeah.
hospitals and stuff. But it's mostly okay here. Especially lately now, there haven't been as many people in the grocery stores, and so it feels more safe to go and do our uh, chores and things.
That's good, but you've been staying at home, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Only going out for groceries and like pharmacy and laundry. Those are the only things.
And I had my friend Sam Gordon here with me last week. He did lighting on Beetlejuice.
Oh,
How's it?
amazing.
Yeah, it was. He was actually supposed to leave anyways, even with Corona happening, but then
Got
it
you.
ended up just happening altogether.
Yeah.
Um, how's it affecting you? I mean, you're involved in two shows. One of the biggest Broadway shows ever on Broadway,
Yeah.
and then this new one that just Moulin Rouge that just opened recently. How's that been affecting you and your friends and your buddies and your coworkers, all the people in Broadway?
Yeah, it's a weird time. I feel like I'm very lucky because I have this special situation where I work at Hamilton Moulin Rouge part time, but I also work at NYU part time as a staff pianist.
Mm.
And they continued having classes online. So I was still getting a paycheck through them to work for them, even while Broadway was shut down. So it was like all of my Broadway coworkers are out of work and like struggling to get unemployment and do all that stuff. And it's such a huge bummer. But then I'm sitting over here being like, well, I'm actually okay for a while. But I also feel deeply like the loss that all of them are feeling right now. I know it's really, really hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually I saw this past week that Frozen closed.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
Disney, like Frozen closed, but now Hamilton's coming out with the Disney Plus live performance.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there's still life of theater going on, even though these big stages aren't really working. There's still a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of performers teaching now, like
Yeah.
online. Um, I don't know how we're gonna make that work into revenue for everybody, but
Yeah.
but there's but there's some really great things happening. Like for example, for
Yeah.
you, you just had over this weekend you've been developing a musical,
Yes.
and you had this whole accelerator program. Was that in the plans before all of this happened, or is this like something that came about because of it?
Yeah. So this accelerator program by Apples and Oranges, I think they've done it twice a year for the last 4 or 5 years, and it's always been virtual because they live on the West Coast, and so they're kind of bringing this
Mm,
bi-coastal talent to the thing and talking about different ways to strategize in terms of marketing and are there ways that you can sort of like boost your brand online or do some kind of development online to circumvent some of the normal ways that are more expensive in developing shows. So they're a big into like you don't necessarily need to rent a rehearsal space if you're just needing to see like how your show sounds when it's read. Like you can get a bunch of people together on Zoom and do that for a lot less cost than you would if you needed to buy a rehearsal space and stuff. So we had applied to be a part of the accelerator before everything hit, and then we got word probably like a week or two before it started that we were in. And they said
mhm.
they were going to expand the program. Usually it's 2 hours a day for 2 weeks, and they were doing 3 hours a day, and they were specifically tailoring it to, okay, what does theater making look like right now in the time of COVID? And so that was really helpful and really inspiring, because I had been feeling kind of creatively drained and not really inspired to do much writing or anything of that sort when this all sort of hit. And then this is like, well, there's actually a lot of stuff that you can still be doing, and people are hungry for it. You know, I know that we're all burnt out on screen time, but there's still but art is still being made and people still want it. And as long as we can sort of make that connection, then I think it's worth it.
Are they coming up with ideas of how to monetize and how to get it up there also? Because it seems like they knew about virtual world before virtual world hit all of us.
Yeah. They actually, so they got a cast together in London to do, or not together, virtually together in London to do a Tom Stoppard play called A Separate Piece, which is like a 30-minute long play. And they did it all over Zoom, and they had people pay like, I don't know, some number of pounds. So I don't know what it translates to in dollars, but probably like $20 or less to get into the broadcast to watch it. And then they had like 800 people end up watching it, and so all that money went to charity, but they considered it a really successful monetization, because that's way more than would cover overhead if it was not going to charity. And so they're talking about that. They're talking about, you know, can you do video content right now? There's some speculation that because all of these stages are empty, once we get to the next phase of social distancing where we can't really have audiences, but maybe we can use stages and film on stages and like put that out into the world. It's all a little speculative, but there's like developing albums from afar where, you know, you work on different parts of the recordings and you put it all together. If any actors that you know have good recording equipment, that's pretty much a given, because we're all sitting around unemployed, happy to do anything. So it's exciting that there are some things out there. Oh, go ahead.
You sound like you have a good recording. Like just the microphone is picking up really, really well.
That's great. I'm not even using a microphone. I'm just using my laptop one.
So it sounds good. So I just don't know how it translates with music and Zoom for sure. I'm doing something musically on Zoom has been very difficult, but hopefully there'll be answers to that. But that's what I wrote a blog about that and how we can see that happening more. Israel's kind of opening up a little bit sooner now. That they're saying, at least, and there's rehearsals in the park with
cool
with masks. So maybe Broadway will start doing that at some point, because you're gonna they're gonna have to need time. They're gonna need time to get back onto the stage anyway.
Yeah,
it's still that rehearsal process.
Yeah, our Broadway League president was talking about how when we get the okay to open up Broadway again, we're still gonna need like 6 weeks to get all the shows back up and running in terms of rehearsals. So you're totally right about that.
Yeah, but that's so amazing. I mean, how did I have so many questions for everyone else also sent here. I mean, how I know I know your whole backstory pretty much, because we've been friends since 2014 with Song of Solomon.
Yeah.
But how did Hamilton come about? Like that's just like. And how does that, what's the word? Like, I mean, it's a pretty big deal, I guess, for a lot of people over here. How does it make you feel? How does that work with, like, you're doing your own shows, Medusa, and you have other projects that we'll be talking about one soon. You're working on one of the biggest stages in New York, and yet you still have NYU and you still have all these other projects. How do you balance all of this? Like, kind of like, for a lot of people, that's like you know, the top thing that they would be loving to do right now.
Yeah.
But you're still going along and creating such amazing work. I mean, I heard some of Medusa when I was in New York, and I saw you last, and it's beautiful. So, like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
How does that process work?
It's wild, right? I feel like a lot of times it's 2 full-time jobs at the same time. But it's really exciting. And I think, like, sort of the cross-pollination from one to the other and how one thing sort of informs or inspires the other is really exciting. So, like, okay, I'll start at the beginning in terms of how I got to Hamilton. I did my undergrad at the University of Miami in Florida, and that's where Alex Lacamoire grew up, is in Miami. And so right before I moved to New York, I met someone from my school who had done a gig with him. And at that time, I'd only known Alex's name from In the Heights. I didn't really know that much about Hamilton. This was the summer of 2015. And he was like, oh, well, I'll just tell him you're coming to New York and he'll hit you up. And I was like, yeah, right. It's Alex Lacamoire. He doesn't have time for that. But he did. He messaged me and he welcomed me to the city and congratulated me on NYU, which is where I was going to grad school, and offered to give me any tips on the business or the city. And we ended up talking on the phone, and then he invited me in to a rehearsal, a lunch break from the rehearsal of Hamilton as it was preparing to go to Broadway, so that he could just hear me play through some things. And then he invited me to sit in the pit once it opened and watch from the, like, next to the keyboard player, which was really cool. So that was my first time seeing Hamilton. It was up on this really grainy monitor that the musicians were watching as they were playing. So I was getting to watch the lyrics happening on the music and the music itself and the monitor, and it was really cool. And then afterwards, they were like, so what's your schedule like? And I was just blown away because I'm like, that's not how this happens. This is how it happens. Because I know lots of people work for years to get to Broadway in any capacity. And I felt like I was just getting it handed to me. So I was very lucky to be in the right place at the right time. And that Alex is so generous. And he makes a real point of sort of helping out young people, jumpstarting their careers, because that's kind of what happened to him. He got to start subbing in Lion King when he was 23. So I think he likes to pay it forward.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Our mutual friend, and Andrew also, that's basically like the Song of Solomon connection. Like, he went to Lion King, they just put him into the pit, they asked him to play, and then he's been doing the show for like 15 years. So it does happen.
Yeah, it does. It's amazing though. Whenever people ask me how I did it, I'm like, well, it's not something that anyone can really repeat, but here's what happened to me. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. Yeah. But in terms
were you playing? Sorry. I would love for you to continue because it's just so amazing, and I see some people are commenting on that. But
sure.
Were you playing piano from like a young age?
Yeah,
What point did you start your?
I started when I was 6 years old. My sisters, I have two older sisters, and they'd been playing before me. And I think I started, we had a Nintendo 64, and I had started to sort of like figure out how to play the songs from the video games. And my parents were like,
cool.
Yeah. So that was fun. And my parents were like, well, do you want lessons? And I was like, yeah, sure. And both of my sisters eventually stopped, and I just kept going. And it wasn't anything that I was like, well, I'm going to do this for my life. But I was like, well, it's fun. And I don't know. I'm very grateful that my mom was very disciplined about making sure that I practiced and stuff. And so I went to the University of Miami to study music composition, but I also was studying piano the whole time I was there too. I didn't get a degree in it, but I was practicing a lot and accompanying my friends who were vocalists or instrumentalists. So I was like sort of inhaling a lot of music and getting better at sight reading and just navigating a bunch of different styles, so that by the time I got to New York, I was actually able to play for auditions and things like that, and was actually able to make some money off of it, which was great. Yeah,
I certainly remember that. Those were good times too, when you first came to New York.
Yeah, Song of Solomon was my first New York gig. That was the first thing I ever got paid to do in New York. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it just got better.
Yeah.
So how does that work? That I guess it's part-time with Moulin Rouge and Hamilton. You're able to kind of pick. I don't know if you pick, but like you're able to kind of like meld the week. And you have to be there each. How does that work? To work on both musicals.
It's a juggling process for sure, but both musicals have a team of rehearsal pianists, so I'm not the only one. Mm-hmm. And then, so like Hamilton will send out an email every week and be like, hey, who's free, what times? And then you send them back your availability, and they just they make the jigsaw puzzle work. And then my Moulin Rouge, the Moulin Rouge team is a little smaller, so my boss usually just texts me and he's like, hey, are you free this time? And he knows my general NYU schedule. So like, that's also the jigsaw puzzle of like, well, I'm supposed to be at NYU this time, but, I can run over here right after or whatever. So yeah, I think it's great that they spread it out that way among a bunch of different rehearsal pianists, because that means nobody's getting burnt out and a lot of people are getting
Mhm.
opportunities. It's really great. Yeah. So from
Do
any,
do the actors?
go
Sorry,
ahead.
there might
No,
have been a lag there. But my question is, I don't? This is just digging deeper into the world of you guys rehearsing. But like,
yeah.
do the actors have like a different idea? Like when you walk into the room, or a different rehearsal pianist walks in, pianist. I never know how to pronounce it
Either
exactly,
one is
right?
fine. Yep.
Um, Either one's
Yeah.
great, awesome. Um, so is there a different way that like do the actors sometimes um, like they have to follow them? How does that work? Like the different if you have 10 rehearsal pianists coming in, like
Mhm.
you're coming in, do they have to get used to each of your different way, or is there like a very clear this is how the piano is played, and we follow this sheet music like this, and that's how we're rehearsing it?
Totally. That's a
Do
great question.
I think I asked the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think rehearsal pianoing it's so interesting. I think for Hamilton, it's very much like this is exactly what you have to do. All of the notes are written out and articulated exactly as Alex wants them. You get a little freedom in whether you're going to beatbox this little section or like drum it on the piano, because there's so much percussion in Hamilton that it's not all easily translatable to the piano. But for the most part, everybody's kind of doing exactly the same thing, and it's really important to keep the same tempo for everything. Um, because in the show they use a click track, so everyone is like locked into a tempo. So if you don't play at that tempo in rehearsal, the dancers will feel like something's off. So as much as you can sort of be a
Mm-hmm.
cookie cutter of each other, that's the best way to be. And then for Moulin Rouge, though, it's a little different in that the piano vocal or the rehearsal book is not written out note for note. So I'll be like, okay, well, I know that this is what's written, but I also know that there's this thing happening in the guitar here, and there's this backbeat that the drums is doing that's really important for the dancers to hear. So like, either I will just figure that out on my own and put it in, or we'll talk about it in rehearsal how to navigate it. It's sort of like a hodgepodge of both, and so.
Mm-hmm.
So the dancers aren't always hearing exactly the same thing, but hopefully they're at least hearing the important hits, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. You're basically giving them their sometimes you play the note, the actual notes, and sometimes there's the underlying notes. I think
Mm-hmm.
from my reading sheet music, like
Yeah.
there's the left hand and the right hand and all that. So sometimes you'll play just the melody for people to
Mm-hmm.
really like singers, at least in the beginning, to click with it. But then later on, you're going to go to like the next level. But you
Right.
still might give that note here and there for people
Yeah.
to really understand where they're at.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally.
uh, so you work specifically with the full. This is a question. I think this is what Shlomita actually. She's an amazing. She played Daniela in the Heights, and she was
Oh,
just Mama
cool.
on Chicago.
Wow.
She's studying Academy of Music here, and she actually I interviewed her last week. She's
Oh, cool.
asking, um, what is she asking? I think she's asking, do you get to work with the actual like the singers, or is it like you're in the room with everybody rehearsing?
Totally.
Is there a
Yeah.
specific one-on-one sometimes that
Most of what I do for both of those
cool?
shows is it's mostly accompanying choreography rehearsals. So it's not as much focused on the music because the music director has this very specific vision of how he wants the music to sound vocally. So the rehearsal pianist,
Mm-hmm.
that's not necessarily in their job description. Although if I hear something that's a little off, I'll be like, hey, check your harmony here. It's like this. Sometimes it depends on, you kind of have to read the room and it's like, is this actor going to be receptive to this, or are they going to feel like defensive or anything?
Right.
And then
Totally.
sometimes there are moments where someone will come over to me and be like, I just can't, like, can you help me get this riff? And I'll be like, well, here are these 3 techniques that might help you, like, sort of loosen up your throat or, like, keep your tongue forward and get it out of the way so that you can, like, navigate that riff easier or whatever it is. So it's mostly just being, like,
Mm-hmm.
just being sort of an accompaniment track, counting in the dancers when we start from a certain spot. That's very minimal coaching, at least in what I'm doing.
but you're there. You're there, and if an actor comes over to you, you're like ready to coach them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How many times does it happen in rehearsal? How many times does it happen in a?
It's pretty rare. I feel like
rehearsal, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like both of like the music director of Moulin Rouge was he worked on In the Heights with Alex Lacamoire, so they both kind of come from this same like branch of music directing, and they're pretty. I feel like they prepare their singers really well. So there's not a lot that I end up having to do. It's a combination of their prepping them well, and then the singers just having a lot of like self drive and teaching themselves. So by the time they get to me, there's usually not much that I need to do, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's sometimes, I mean, that is the difference between professional, like even with film, like the actors will come already prepared beforehand.
Yeah.
And community theater where we deal with, where it like takes three months or so for people to get off book or exactly get the notes right. Because we're not all trained here. Though there are those people that are amazing and get it right away, and also work at it. I know one particular guy, I'm not going to name names. He will go over the dance forever in his house, in his room, until he gets it right. And he's amazing. And he's not obviously a dancer. Like, he's just in community theater. He's an amazing guy, but he works on it so much. But there is also the time period. Like, you guys have how long? Like 2 weeks, or not even? Like, you're constantly.
It depends. Yeah.
When someone switches in, like if there's a new ensemble member, like you have a certain amount of time where you have to get them up there. It's fascinating. This is all fascinating to me. Yeah. I wanted to go to. Wow. Okay. Shlomit's asking so many awesome questions.
Amazing.
As she always does. She's amazing.
Yeah.
I told her she should interview me.
Yes.
So I mean, we said like it takes like 3 weeks. It's 2 or 3 weeks for all the tech and everything too. Like, okay, we lost Rachel. She should be back soon. We're still in the broadcast. I'm just gonna message her and see where she went. Hope we didn't. There she is.
Sorry, I clicked the wrong thing.
Hey.
I was trying to click over to the comments.
Right. I feel like
with you.
It's okay.
It's my fault.
Here. No, I could actually show them.
Oh, that's really so cool. Oh, wow.
So great. Ken Davenport does this with his guys. So I started working on this now with StreamYard, but I could actually put the comments on here. So this is what Shlomit just asked. Okay. There's so many questions coming in. I thought you were embarrassed for a second, all these questions.
No,
and then I wanna jump to a really cool project that you're working on, and it has a lot to do with what's going on now. I
sure. Yeah.
So you could ask this, and I'm gonna put on another question after this, and then we'll go to the next part.
Okay. So for Moulin Rouge, I was not, for Hamilton, I came on after they opened, so I wasn't part of the rehearsal process. But with Moulin Rouge, I was a music assistant / rehearsal pianist for their process leading up to Broadway. So I accompanied a week of, now I can't remember what pre-pro, which is like a week before everyone shows up and they start rehearsing together. They had to work out some kinks and some new choreography, because the show was probably 80% the same as when it was in its off-Broadway tryout in Boston. But they changed some music, they changed some transitions. And so Sonia Tai, the choreographer, brought in like 8 or so of the cast of the ensemble and just worked through these new transition moments. And so that was a week. And then I think we had about a month of rehearsals. Yeah, I think we had 4 weeks. And then we had a month of previews, and then we opened. So it was sort of a longer process than I think we maybe needed, but everyone always feels like there's not enough time, no matter how long the process is. So they were very polished from the time they got ready.
It doesn't,
yeah, but it's such a huge show.
It doesn't matter here either. It's like you could have 6 months.
Yeah.
Every show these days. That's one of the biggest things that I think is going to change on Broadway. When this is all done, and actually Ken Davenport, that's one of the things he says is we're going to have quality over quantity. So tech is going to be less, unless if you're doing live stream Zoom with the musical too and adding it in. But there'll probably be a lot of shows which there'll be less tech involved, possibly. But it's been getting bigger and bigger. Like Rocky was, whoa, and they closed pretty quick because of how much they put in that. And First Date, there's so many shows that have just like so much tech. So Shulamit, the answer is it could be anywhere between, a month to 2 months, but usually it's like a month or 3 weeks to prepare. So this is the next question, and then I'm gonna go into the other thing, and then hopefully maybe we'll have time for another question.
Yeah.
This is Daniel Lewin. He was in Spring Awakening with me. He played Charlie Brown recently, and he was in the Heights. He was Paragua, Paragua guy, and he just did so much, and he's an amazing guy. But this is his question.
Okay, yeah, it's a great question. I feel like one of the main things that I struggle with, and I think a lot of people struggle with, is like being on the edge of burnout a lot, especially if you're working on like 2 different aspects within the industry. Because I'm sort of doing the writing thing and I'm doing the piano thing at the same time, and so sometimes that takes up a lot of the same mental space and time. And when I've been playing piano for 11 hours in a day, the last thing I want to do is come home and sit at the piano for 2 more hours to write a song. If for no other reason than that my back is killing me at that point. So yeah, I think when I first came to New York, I was like, I am just here to work myself into the dirt. I'm not interested in having a real life. I just want to like go for it and like be single-minded and ambitious. And the longer that I've been here, the more I'm realizing how kind of unhealthy that mindset is, and how important it is to have holistic experiences and to nurture relationships that are important to you, and sometimes prioritize those things over the career and the art, because the people that you have around you are all that you have. And so if you don't take care of them, it's hard to like sort of maintain or get those relationships back if you spend too long just like staying with your nose to the grindstone and doing if you turn the art into the work, I think is what it is. Yeah.
And then COVID-19 happened, which was like, bang, be with your relationships. Take time out of everything that you're doing to really connect. And I mean, you've been working with Wes for how long on Medusa now?
Yeah, let's see, it's coming up on 4 years, I guess.
4 years, and you guys just have this. Just seeing what you guys do together and seeing you both together in the same room, you have such a great relationship, and to be able to advance Medusa now during this time, it's so amazing. So I want to ask you, because actually you worked on a project. I think you started in 2014. You actually asked me to write a little bit for you at that time as well.
Yes, that was great. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. I remember too. That's why I'm bringing it up. It was such an amazing idea that I think really is appropriate to talk about because of what we're dealing with now with COVID. But you created a project. You have Dean and Brush. And you guys created this thing called the Anxiety Project, and what I think you did, you tell me differently, is basically you got people to tell stories about their anxiety and to really open up and be vulnerable, and then you took their stories and you put it into composition, into a whole entire musical, and it was performed a few times, and I think there's also an album. And that experience was in 2014. What did you learn from doing that, and how can it really, how can we kind of like put it into now the moment of COVID-19? With there's so much anxiety, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of crazy thoughts out there, and we don't know what's going to be in the future. How does that translate? Maybe is there like an anxiety project 2.0 COVID-19 in the works? I don't know, or sure. I just threw that idea out now and totally go for it.
Yeah, Yeah, that's great questions. Yeah, so we started working on David Brush and I started working on this in, I guess it was 2014. Yeah, we had met in 2013 um, via New York Public Library's Across a Crowded Room online collaboration program, where they were talking about how difficult it is to find collaborators, especially if you don't live in New York, which at the time neither of us did. And so they would post prompts every 2 weeks, and then lyricists could post as comments lyrics, and then composers could come and be like, "Oh, I'd like to set that lyric." And so that's how we met. And then David got us a regular writing spot on the blog called Crazy Town, which is a musical theater writing blog. And so he had the idea of like, well, what if we just have people, what if we solicit submissions of people talking about, any of their struggles with anxiety and depression and other mental illness, and we'll turn them into songs and scenes and stuff. And we got a lot of responses, which was amazing because we're not well known at all. It was a lot of them were like our friends and family being brave enough to just email and be like, well, I'm not going to be anonymous, but here's my story. And we've finally sort of like gotten it to a point where it has a through line. And like most of the stories that are in there are now kind of composites rather than anyone's, specific story, but all of it has like a kernel of truth in it. And I feel like I just keep learning from those people now that it's, 5-6 years later, and we've done a few, like you said, we've done a few concerts and readings, and we have an album coming out in like a month or two, hopefully, which is really exciting. But it's really rewarding to see how it keeps touching people, because I feel like there's anxiety at all points in life, not just when there's a global virus, but especially now. And so it's exciting to think about the fact that people can take comfort in these songs, sort of feel seen, even though, we didn't write them with any thought of what would be coming in 2020. So the fact that I keep learning from them and keep being like, oh, maybe I struggle also with anxiety and I didn't realize it. And, or, even if it's not necessarily a diagnosable thing, it's still like, I think we all struggle with it to varying degrees. And so as much as we can learn from other people who have really had to struggle with it big time and have like figured out how to triumph over it or live with it, because a lot of the stories that they sent us were not necessarily just centered on the mental illness, but more about like their day-to-day lives and how it sort of wove in and out of what their daily, failures and triumphs and things were. So I hope that answers your question.
There's so much there, and I think that's a continuous. It is what you said. Like it's a continued conversation, because we're not just dealing with it now. It's always there. It just now it kind of like brushed it to the like you have rain that brings all the dirt up.
Yeah.
So
yeah, totally.
It's like that, and people are dealing with these kinds of things, and sometimes it is exactly their day-to-day life, and they don't really see the mental illness and all that happening.
Right.
But if they take a moment to really look, and other people take a moment to really look at it, it's there. What's the name of the album? Shlomit wanted to know.
Yeah, it's going to be called The Anxiety Project Original Cast Recording. And it's in the final stages of being mastered right now. So as soon as that's done.
Are there problems with that during the time now, or it's able to still?
Thankfully, because I think the back end of music engineering is such a solitary process, for better or for worse. I mean, the recording, you all have to be there. And so we recorded it with students from Arizona State University in January. And so then the mixer had everything that he needed to sort of put it together. And we've just been emailing back and forth about it. And then he sent it on to his friend who does the mastering, which is also just like most people just have their studios that they can go to and not encounter other people, or they have home studios. So we really lucked out on that part because we had already done the recording, the in-person group stuff. And so like this can pretty much proceed unimpeded, which is really nice for us.
That is awesome, and I'm really looking forward to that, because it is such a powerful project, and it's going to change lives for sure. Like people are going to listen to it and they're going to be like, wow, and it's from people. It's from people, which is also like you don't always get those kinds of things. I mean, everything's from people, obviously, but we're all
Right.
like, oh, from artists. It's from this artist or that, or Lin-Manuel Miranda. But like,
Right.
this is from like people just writing in, and it's
Yeah.
created, put it to something really amazing. Daniel Lewin has another question that was posted up here for you. This is his wife, Bracha, who also, they met through Charlie Brown, I believe. Like
Oh,
she went
wow.
and saw him, and then they ended up connecting a year later.
I
And
love
she's
that.
also done a bunch of theater. Yeah, there's tons of those kinds of relationships in our community. It's really
You're changing.
a blessing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. Cool. My favorite piece to play, I always end up saying Satisfied, because I think it's like kind of the most powerful, one of the most powerful like female driven songs in the show. And the fun thing for me, and the fun thing about Hamilton, is the rehearsal pianists are strongly encouraged, if not now required, I don't know, to be able to rap while they play. So we have to learn all of the vocal parts, because often we're working with like ensemble members who don't sing a lot of the main stuff. Like that's mostly an Angelica song, but they need to be able to track where they are in the song, because a lot of the show is sort of based on hip hop loops and things that are like, it's like the same 4 bars over and over again, sort of. And so it's hard to keep track of where you are. Plus the choreography is so intricately linked to a lot of the lyrics that someone needs to be making the lyrics happen in the room. And so that falls to the rehearsal pianist in this instance. And so I get to basically be Angelica. I like to joke that I'm one of the only white girls who gets paid to sing Angelica parts.
Well, actually, let's look at this. It's the lyrics in the room where it happens. The room.
Yes.
There's an amazing actress in our community. I hope she's watching. I'm not sure. She loves Satisfied. She sang it a lot in karaoke, but she could hit the floor with it. Like she's
cool.
done. I think I sent you. She played a role Hannah Senesh a bunch of years ago. Her name is Rivka Durey. She just moved to Israel. I also interviewed her. She's one of the first people I interviewed.
Cool.
She came to Israel. She joined the theater community, and she just knew Hamilton by heart.
Yeah.
And she sings Satisfied like you wouldn't believe it.
Oh, cool.
She's so talented, and she's a white girl.
The bummers of bummers.
from Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Great.
Yeah. And then this question, I think I don't know how you could answer this, because I'm sure you learned a lot.
Yeah, that's
but this
fair.
is Gotti. I interviewed him a week ago. I think he's studying in school right now, actually, in Hebrew University, and he's studying English literature. And we talked about focus, because he's like, I want to be doing art, but I also know I need to study. And I said, don't worry, study. That's what you're doing right now. That's what you should focus on, and you'll get to the art, and this will actually inform what kind of art you could create later.
For sure.
And he played Sonny in the Heights, along with a bunch of other roles in the community. So this is his question.
Okay. Yeah, it was a 4-year degree, and then I did 2 years more at NYU in their graduate musical theater writing. So I would say in undergrad, what I tried to learn, I guess, or what I sort of focused on was like, I want to learn as many of these tools as possible. Like, what are the 20th century composers doing? Even if it's weird and if it's not something that I necessarily want to do, like, how can I stretch myself so that, like, when I go out into the world, I at least have the tools, even if I don't necessarily use them all, or not in the same way that like modern classical composition does. And also, I think part of my studies there helped me develop sort of my philosophy on music, because it seems like a lot of the classical modern composition world right now, or at least some of my fellow students, had this attitude of, well, if the audience doesn't like it, it's on them, and they just don't understand me and they don't appreciate me. And I feel like theater is so much the opposite of that. And theater is like, how can we meet the people where they are and like give them a gift? And so it was really interesting to live in that and be like, okay, I see what's happening here and I don't really like it. And it's also like not monetizable really. And I think that's part of why, this is such a tangent, but part of why classical music I think is struggling is because they're not meeting their audience where they are in the way that they did 300 years ago or whatever. And just like, there's so much to explore and there's so much more we can be doing. And I think that theater is doing a lot of that. And so
Yeah.
that's exciting to me.
They
Yeah.
do try here in
Oh,
the
good.
academy. I was talking to Shlomit in their interview. I saw her doing. She had her opera, like her final project, and the director had brought it to Me Too and all these other places. But it was a classic piece. It was Shlomit. You want to just comment what it was again? I forgot. While we're waiting, we're running out of time. But who's your favorite? Who's your favorite 2000s 20s composer? 2020s composer?
Maybe 20th century.
20th century composer.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Stravinsky is awesome. I think it's so fun because he did the Rite of Spring, right, which is that like bum 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 bum. Very cool. I think he collaborated. I'm gonna get this wrong, but I think he collaborated with Baryshnikov, who was like that famous choreographer, and they just like they were exploring very cool and primal sounds. And every time I've seen that piece live, it's just really exciting. It kind of like makes your blood boil. But then he also went through this period where he did an opera that was like neoclassical. And so he like kind of went back to like more digestible harmonies, I guess. And so I love that he sort of like kind of explored whatever he was interested in. Yeah, I think he's one of my faves. But
Cool.
also, I mean, like Stephen Sondheim, right? If we can count him as a 20th century composer.
For sure. I mean, he's one of the. They did the 90th birthday for him, which
Yes,
was amazing.
that was amazing. Yeah.
So Mozart, La Finta Giardinera.
Okay. Cool. Great. That's awesome.
Here, so that's what they did, and they added in a lot of. She wants to be friends with you. Well, I'm sure you guys can connect on Facebook.
Absolutely.
Toby, hi. So we're actually, I think we're out of time, but this was so amazing, Rachel. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor. It's amazing to be a part of this and to see what you're doing with your community over there. It's incredible.
My community is one of the best out there. I love them all, and
Awesome.
and I really hope that we can connect people from all over the world, and really because there's so much to learn from each other.
Yeah.
And now you and Shlomit are friends.
Amazing. Great.
Okay. On that note, see you guys tomorrow on Jet Live. We've got Matti Metzinger, the first 11-year-old on Jet Live.
Amazing.
And then we've got a few more, but they're all scheduled now because of StreamYard.
Cool.
But I don't need to tell you all. It's just all there on Jerusalem English Theater community. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much again, Rachel.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye.